halfway through the year now, so let's talk about my favorite books that I've read so far. Now, these books that I'm going to talk about, I have read from January to July 2024, and they are my 5-star reads or my really, really high 4-star reads. In no particular order, we are going to start with The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. These ones were really kind of the milestone in my YouTube career, to be honest, because that's when I started to get people going, oh, these are good books. I agree, these are very good books. So this trilogy consists of The Clockwork Angel, The Clockwork Prince, and The Clockwork Princess. This entire trilogy is so ridiculously good and emotional, and my heart just like was ripped into 100 pieces. And I was really surprised because honestly, when I read the first book, like halfway through it, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like enjoy reading this, but I like to always at least try and finish a book. But then it's like boom, 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 second book, third book. Oh, that ended. The epilogue of this book, so amazing, so amazing. So basically the plot of this book is it takes place in the Shadowhunter world, which is basically a universe created by Cassandra Clare, and this is more like a prequel to the more popular known Mortal Instruments series. And so it takes place in like, I don't know, 18th century, maybe earlier or so, and it follows along our main character who kind of gets wrapped up into the Shadowhunter world. And so there's this guy who's basically creating all these like infernal devices, and they're pretty much just trying to like kill a bunch of people. It's not like a super, super unique kind of plot, but the characters and the way that it's written and just like the universe is what makes it so captivating to me, especially Gem. Oh, I love Gem with my heart. I think that I probably would have liked the series even more if I read it when I was a teenager, but even reading it as a young adult, it's like, it's really good. This one especially, and this one, and the ending and the twist, like, it's one of those series that it's like kind of hard to explain like why it's so good, because it is just a regular plot, but it's just so well done. I definitely recommend it if you like kind of like modern day, but also mixed with some magic and demons and stuff. Like, it's so good. Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. Honestly, I'm shocked at myself that I haven't read the rest of her books. Like, she has so many, and I don't know why I haven't read them yet, because of how much, like, I love this book, so it makes no sense why I haven't read it. But this one was so good. It was so like steamy and spicy, and the tension and just the whole entire story was incredible. It basically follows along our two characters, Prince Envy, exactly as you think. He is one of the 7 deadly sins, and Camilla, who seems like your regular kind of like artist lady. And he's basically, Prince Envy is playing this game, and he's involved in the game, and it's really important that he wins the game because that will save his people. And Camilla kind of gets roped into this game, and let's just say there's a lot of tension, a lot of spiciness and magic, and pretty good reveals. But honestly, like, for me, the spice of this one is just like so good. If you like spicy books and you like romantasy, this is probably one of the best that I've read, like, ever. It's just like, it's so good, and it's just such a fun story to follow along. All the characters are really great. Everything about it is just like, I devoured this book in like 2 days, and it's like a big guy too, but like, it's really good. Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is a duology, and if I could erase my memory to reread a book, I would reread this. It's just so good. I honestly think about it every single day. It's one of my favorite books. Well, I'm saying books, like, pretend that these are the same book, because they're part of the same series. But yeah, if I could reread these, I would. They're one of my favorites of all time, and I'm so obsessed with them still. I would reread these and like time and time again. They're so good. What's really fun about this is that it follows our main character, Iris, and it's sort of like a World War II era, but it isn't exactly, because it's actually like gods and goddesses that are in a big battle. And what's unique is that our main character isn't really involved in the battle. She's the journalist, and she's reporting on this, and like, she has this rival at her work, and he follows her to like where she ends up taking this new opportunity because like it's just better for her. And the romance of this book. Okay, listen. So Roman is her rival, and he has this typewriter, and his typewriter, and he writes a little message and slides it under like the closet door. It gets delivered to Iris, who reads it and can reply back to him. And so she was writing letters to her brother who went to fight in this war. And she threw it in the closet and it disappeared and it went to Roman, her rival. And so they're like writing each other, but they don't know who each other are. Roman knows that it's Iris, but Iris doesn't know that it's Roman. And it's so amazing and so cool. And I love it so much. And one of the best stories ever. When I tell you that I screamed when reading this book, I literally did. I almost threw the book across the room, especially what happens at the end of this one, and then what happens to some of the characters in this one. Like, it's a beautiful love story, and it's magical, and it's fun, and journalistic, and typewriters, and it's just such a vibe. I also read the second book in the Emily Wilde series. This is by Heather Fawcett, and it's Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Worlds, and I had been counting down the days to read this book. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything that this author does, to be honest, and it's so good. The first book, amazing. It doesn't really count in this category, though, because I did not read it this year. This one was a really great sequel to a really great first book, and the romance and the magic and the lore, there's so much really great, like, intricate folklore that Heather Fawcett weaves into these books about the Fae and the magic system. And another thing I really like actually about it is that it doesn't take place in like a standard book area that like is in the modern world. And what I mean by that is it's not in the United States and it's not in Europe. It's like these kind of more like Nordic, icy, cold areas that it takes place in. And Poe the fairy from the first book makes another appearance, and just, if you like fairies and you like folklore and you like a really fun, magical, whimsical story with a male love interest who's just so absurdly hilarious, Emily Wilde. I'm also pretty sure that Emily's character is like neurodivergent, and so representation as well is very key. So it's really great. Another book that I was waiting very early on in the year, counting down the days for, was Crescent City #3, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I was shocked because when I read this book, I was absolutely hooked. 5 stars, devoured it in less than a week, and like, I heard people really hated it, and I was like, what? And what I really liked about it was the crossover and the characters and the fight and the action, and how it's kind of hinting towards more characters are gonna get their own kind of stories. Because obviously this isn't the last book in the series. There are a bunch of unanswered questions, which is intentional because it's leading you for the next books in the series. That we know Sarah J. Maas does this with her book. She did this, of course, with ACOTAR. And so that's what I'm really excited about, because like this whole thing, it set it up really well. There is so much like great reveals, some epic magicness. And in my opinion, this is the best in the Crescent City series because it was just so well done and it was just really fun. And I think there was a lot of really great character development. I also think that the crossover was really great. And I think maybe some people didn't like this book as much because they had too high of expectations of what the crossover means. I know there was a lot of potential crossover shipping that was happening as well that people were disappointed about. But for me, I thought this was really well executed, and I thought that it was a really great addition to a very interesting series that I didn't really like when I first started it, but this one was really good. Next up, let's talk about the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. The Way of Kins, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, and Rhythm of War. Stormlight Archive is probably, and I keep on going like I'm surprised that these are really great books, but this is all just really great books that I love. But Stormlight Archive is probably the best high fantasy series that I've ever read. And Brandon Sanderson is just such an impressive writer. The world that he creates, the realistic characters, scenarios, the thought and like logic that goes behind the magic systems and the technology systems and really just everything. It really does feel like he had went to this place, studied it, and then came back onto our planet and wrote books about it. It's just so realistic, and it's like, it's just so fun. And it's the kind of books that you read them that you're so immersed. They don't feel gigantic, like they are very big books. These are tomes. And what's so interesting is just how well it's done. And like when you read these books, all other books dull in comparison. There are so many times where I'm like, oh yeah, like that was such a great book. And then I go to read another book and I'm like, this is not that good compared to Stormlight Archive. It's really hard to explain what Stormlight Archive is even about because there's so many spoilers that I can't tell you, but that's what makes the entire series so good. But the best way I can describe it is that there are these people and there's this kin guy and he gets assassinated by these kind of like newer people that he discovered, and they're not like humans. They're Proshendi, which I don't really know how to explain that, but they're obviously not like human creatures, and they have different forms that they could take, and they had their own kind of like civilization, and it obviously wasn't as advanced as the humans one. And so they're kind of interacting, they seem like they're gonna be friends, but then boom, they order the death of this kin, starts this big war. And that's pretty much all I can say without spoiling anything, but let's just say that there's magic that comes in, there's something called a Night Radiant, there's Spren, like there's so much stuff, and it's so well done, and it's just beautiful, and you should just read it because it's really hard to explain it, but just believe me that it's really good. Stephanie Garber's Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy literally broke my heart. The absolute chokehold that Once Upon a Broken Heart has on me, and still has on me. I'm pretty sure I read those in February, like it was really early on in the year. And I am still so obsessed with Jax and Evangeline. It actually it rewired my brain. And what's kind of funny about it is that this is the sequel to the Caravel series that you're actually supposed to read first, but I read them in the wrong order. And I actually find this still even better. Jax's character is one of my all-time favorites. He's like this bad guy, but then like he has like a soft spot for like a girl, and like, oh, it's just so good. And he has like a pet name for her, and it's so cute. And he doesn't think he can't fall in love with anybody because anytime he kisses someone, they die because his kiss is deadly. And so you have like all of this tension between him and Evangeline, and they can't actually kiss because like she'll die if he does, and he really cares about her and she cares about him, but they also hate each other at one point, and there's just so much that goes on. And he's the Prince of Hearts, and it's so beautiful, and I love it so much, and there's so much magic, and every single thing about this series, like, I need a breather. It's incredible. I've read so many great books this year, and I'm just like getting so hyped about all of them, but like this one, I would say Once Upon a Broken Heart and Divine Rivals, my brain's been rewired, completely rewired, because I can't stop thinking about them. I love it. Although I would say that the last book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series was not very good. It had a very disappointing ending, but I'm still pretending that there's going to be more books after that wrap up those loose ends. So it's still my favorite, and I'm obsessed with it. Basically, the way that the story goes is that our main character, Evangeline, the boy that she loves, is getting married to somebody else. And that breaks her heart. And so she wants to stop the wedding. And so she goes to the Prince of Hearts, who had recently just kind of set up like a church and stuff. He's kind of like a god in a way. And she wants him to stop the wedding. But he's a very interesting guy. And obviously he's not going to do exactly what she wants. And so what he does is he actually turns all of the wedding people into stone. And the only way to get them out of stone is to like drink this like liquid that says like poison. And so obviously no one's gonna do that. And so she's really upset because she made this deal with him and he made the deal with her. And the deal he has with her is that she has to kiss like 3 people to break the curse. And it's like a whole thing. And so now they're like thrown into these situations together, and it's so fun. It's so fun. I love it so much. Next up, we have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And this book was so good, but it also made me so infuriated while I was reading it, which is like weird because I love it a lot. It's a 5-star read, but it also like infuriated me, but like in the best way, because we have an unreliable narrator in this book, and she basically steals the manuscript of her best friend after her best friend dies in like a freak accident, and says that she wrote it. And so she's basically trying to back up all of her claims constantly. There's a lot of microaggressions, there's a lot of misogyny, there's a lot of racism, like there's a lot of really sensitive important topics that are covered in this book, with of course the overlying theme of like, is it plagiarism? Did she copy it? Because she did change it still. And the main character is constantly like spinning out of control. She's super, obviously like you're reading stuff about it and you're like, what? Like, what is happening? What is the reality? What has actually happened versus what you're getting from the character? And it's just so well done. And one of the biggest themes about it is like, aside from like the plagiarism aspect, it's like, can she really write a story about something that she has never really like experienced, not related to her culture, and then like her publishers set her up to make her look like that she's like Chinese when she's not, and they like change her name and take pictures. Like, it's like a whole entire like mess. It's a messy book, but written very well. And so it's the kind of book that you sit down and you have to read it all, because it's like you want to know what happens, and every page just shocks you or angers you, and it's really good. Now, these are more like honorary high 4 stars, not actually 5 stars, but I still really like them, and I've been thinking about them more often than I should. So they make it in this list, which is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune and Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I think for me, what's just so great about these is the banter, the romance, the beautifully handled craft of the write-in, the metaphors, the Canadian representation, and the summer vibes. It's all about the summer vibes. And I think that's what makes these just stand out so much, especially because I read them during like the summertime as it is right now. And they're just really well done. We have a Best Friends to Lovers, which is actually executed very well. I find a lot of the times Best Friends to Lovers can be like a little bit awkward and not well done, but this one was like realistic, and it followed along like, it was really like a coming of age story. And this one that we're talking about right now is Every Summer After. And the main character, and every single summer, she goes up to the cottage, and the neighbors of that cottage are 2 brothers who live there, and they end up becoming best friends. She and the youngest brother, and then the older brother's just kind of there sometimes. And they grow up, they don't have any feelings for each other at first, but then like start to hit puberty, they start to get to know each other a little bit more, and they're like, kind of like this person. And so it really just follows along the 2 timelines of like their childhood together, and then as adults, something happened that separated their friendship, and then now they're reconnecting again. So it's very beautifully done. It's so summery, it's so cottage, adventure-y, romance, tension, coming of age. And then Every Summer After by Carly Fortune is another really great summertime read. It takes place on PEI, which is Prince Edward Island, and it's like a beautiful place, and the main character ends up going there because her best friend is getting married, and then she gets like cold feet and she just boom goes off to PEI like a week before the wedding. So her best friend obviously follows, finds out like what's going on, but the catch is that she had a thing with her best friend's brother, but she didn't realize it was her best friend's brother. And so they don't get together because it's like the best friend's brother. And so there's constantly all of this tension because they had been together, but then like they can't be together, but they want to be together, and all of this back and forth. And it's done in a really well done way, not in like the annoying way that sometimes tends to happen where you're just like, oh, come on. But no, it's really well done, and it's like swoon worthy, and I was like giggling, I was like kicking my feet all around. Like, it was very good and very summery. Another book that had me giggling and kicking my feet everywhere is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Now this one is, this is so good. Basically follows along our characters Daphne and Miles, and what's really awkward is that Daphne's fiance ends up getting with Miles's fiance. So now we have these 2 fiancés who now are gonna live together. And so that means that their original fiancés end up moving in together because they have nowhere else to stay and no one else who really understands that situation. And lo and behold, a beautiful friendship forms, and this friendship turns into more. And it's so funny, like beautiful. It's the things that happen in this book. I was like laughing out loud. There was really cute moments, kicking my feet. The spice in this one was good as well. And just following along the entire story of these 2 people who are in like this really awkward situation that doesn't really happen to people, and the fact that they both know that it happened to each other. Like, it's like a whole thing. And then just like following along these characters, It's so well executed. I love it so much. It's 5 stars. The other Emily Henry book that I absolutely like cried over was Beach Read. And this one really took me in for a loop because I thought that it was going to be this cute little funny little beachy read similar to like the Carly Fortune books, but no, this was actually complex. It was emotional. It dealt with like family trauma. It dealt with mental illness. It dealt with grief. It dealt with so many different things. And it's also about 2 writers, and it's just so beautiful. I think this is the first book that I cried at this year. It was just like so well done. It was that letter scene that got me. And there's just something about that, and the characters and the growth that they go through and like the love that they share, and just, this is such a beautiful book. And I don't know if I'll ever read anything like this, because the first thing is that it's just like I didn't expect it, and the second thing is it was just so well done. Like Emily Henry is such a good writer, and she creates such realistic characters, and for me at least, these characters were very relatable, and so I think that's what really just like struck a chord with me. But it's absolutely beautiful, but don't be fooled, it is not a happy-go-lucky book. Bride by Ali Hazelwood was also a very, very pleasant surprise of a book that I read. I didn't think I was gonna like it as much as I did, but I absolutely loved it. It's about an arranged marriage between a vampire and a werewolf, and that's already like a beautiful premise in my opinion. And it becomes so much more than that. It's not just like a nice spicy book. It is a nice spicy book, but there's more to it. There's world was created about like the vampires and the werewolves, and this whole like dynamic about like what's been going on for like thousands of years, and how that relates, and the humans, how do they come into that? How do the vampires come into that? Like this whole entire world. And I was just like, wow, like that's really well done. And it's also very beautifully written, and every single character is so fun to read about and learn about. And there's some really great growth and a lot of shocks, like especially towards the end. I had no idea that that was going to happen. And that kind of leads up that there is going to be another book in the series, even if it's just like not about our main characters but about other characters. But it also has mates. If you like kind of like fated mates, this has it as well. Just this is such a good book. I keep on saying that. I'm like, this is such a good book. Like this isn't on my list of really great books. But the other interesting part about this book is that the reason the vampire agrees to their arranged marriage is because he has some relation to her missing friend, and he was somehow involved in it, and that's all I'm gonna say. How to End a Love Story by Kuang was another really surprisingly awesome read. I expected it to be good, but I didn't expect it to be as complex as it was, because it's basically about 2 characters. Our main character, Helen, is basically like this famous YA author, and her story is gonna become like a movie or like a television show. And Grant is the producer, and they are mortal enemies, but not in like the usual like, oh, we're gonna be mortal enemies. He's responsible for the death of her sister. So that makes things a lot more awkward, a lot more emotional. And so they end up working together on this production. And as you can guess, like tensions are very high. Helen doesn't want to work with him. Grant's trying his best because he's not exactly guilty of the murder. Like he didn't mean for it to happen. Her sister jumped in front of the car, and so he just happened to be the person who was driving. And so it's really interesting because it follows along like those 2 perspectives, and then also how Helen's family feels about the whole thing. And because of the culture that she and her family have, there's a lot of interesting things that happen, and there's a lot of emotional things and hard to deal with things. There's a lot of challenges, and there's really, really excellent focus on mental illness, and it's very realistic and it's beautifully done. And this is like, the story hits really hard, but it's so good and it's so memorable, and I definitely recommend it. Just for the Summer by Amy Jimenez is also a really great summertime read. This was recommended to me by one of my subscribers, and I absolutely love this. I think when I reviewed it, I gave it like a 4.5 or something, but because I think about it so much, I've definitely bumped it up to a 5, and it's so fun. It follows along Emma and Justin, and they are both pretty much like cursed. And what happens is that anybody they date, after they break up, they always find their soulmate. And so they kind of jokingly are like, hey, like, what if we date each other and then we break up and we'll find our soulmate that way. And so that's basically like the premise. And Emma's a traveling nurse, and so she ends up getting an opportunity to kind of go into Justin's like hometown and meet him because they met on Reddit, and then like meet his friends and like fake date him. And there's nothing I love more than fake dating. Maybe one bed trope as well is my favorite, but I digress. They fake date, and obviously fake dating can lead to real feelings. And so what are they gonna do when Emma has agreed, like, yeah, we're gonna break up in like this many times, like after 4 dates and a kiss? But it's also more than just like a cute fake date and story. There is a lot of challenges, a lot of drama, and really difficult situations involving the two main characters' families. Like Justin's mom is going to prison. Emma's mom is just really toxic and horrible. And so there's a lot of interesting dynamics that go on, especially when they are interacting with these parental figures. And it's just so fun, but it's also complex. I think that seems to be kind of the theme of like books that I really like, is on the surface level, they seem like they'll be fun and cute, but then they're actually much deeper than that and more complex. So yeah, this was one of those for sure. And last but certainly not least, the Shadow Realms series by Brenda K. Davies. I've only read 6 books in the series right now, so we're only talking about these 6 books. Who knows, maybe the 5 other books aren't as good, but for me, these are all incredible reads. Not only is it self-published, it's also just a really fun romantasy series that gets straight into the action, and it's pretty unique. It basically is like, takes place after a war. Not during a war, not before a war, it happens after a war. And our main characters end up meeting during like a celebration, and they're Lexi and Cole, and they end up falling for each other. And then a bunch of stuff is happening. There's this man named the Lord, and anybody who sits on this throne in a place called Dragonia basically loses their mind because all this power goes through them and they can't handle that much power. Not like physical power, it's like mentally, like it's not like, oh, I'm the king and I'm gonna like be a powerful person. No, it's like there's literal power in this throne, and it corrupts people because the only people who can sit on the thrones are these people known as Erics. But these Erics are unfortunately all wiped away. So nobody can sit on that throne without losing their mind. And so this man is just like slowly losing his mind, and he's doing like really outrageous things. It's super shocking. The story can get very gory at times, but the twists in this book, they get me almost every single time. And it's also one of those rare stories where you have a ton of mythical creatures in one kind of setting. So there's like dragons, there's vampires, there's fae, there is berserkers, there's zombies, there's so many, like literally any kind of, mermaids and those like flying things. There are just so many. Anything that you can think of is probably in this series, and it's very well executed and it's incredibly underrated. So those are all of my favorite books that I read so far from January to July 2024. And I'm so excited because I was like shocked. I'm like, oh, I love this book. I love this book. I love this book when I'm like pulling them all out for this video. And I was like, is there any book that I didn't like? And then I'm like, oh yeah, there is. Because apparently I've read like 74 books, which is pretty wild actually when I think about it. But yeah, so these are like the best of the best. These are my 5 stars, my high 4 stars. And if you're looking for like a really good romance, romantasy, or fantasy, all of that is definitely in these great reads. So if you're looking for that, you can definitely add these to your list if you haven't read them already. And then shameless promo, I have a video about every single one of these books. So you can definitely watch those if you want like more in-depth about those books in general and kind of like my reactions as I was reading them, because it's pretty fun. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope you had a very good time. I hope you enjoyed all of these incredible books. I would try and pick them all up, but I am not strong enough for that. So just pretend that I'm holding them here. And I hope that you found like a book that you can now add to your TBR, because nothing better than adding a book to your TBR. And if you haven't already, definitely hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoy books and you are a certified book lover, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!